Hi everybody, I'm Ryder from hotspotting.com.au and welcome to today's edition of my regular good news broadcast, which seeks to provide some balance and objectivity in the face of media negativity and sensationalism. One of the big stories of the day is that New Zealand has decided today to start relaxing its lockdown measures, relaxing them from level 4 to level 3. And in Australia, most states recorded no new cases of the virus in the last 24 hours, which continues the well-established trend now of the curve flattening. This means the political leadership and their medical experts can have the conversation about when and how to relax our restrictions with a level of confidence. Now, as we start to have that debate, we can begin to contemplate life on the other side of the shutdown. My personal view is that when the restrictions are lifted, Australians will party like they have at no time since the end of World War II, doing all those simple things that we used to take for granted, like going to cafes, the movies, or the beach, and that will unleash a strong economic recovery. Now, a new survey gives some idea of how Australians plan to get out and spend when life returns to some kind of normality. The survey suggests a back to basics where holidays and lifestyle purchases are concerned. A survey by CT Group shows that Australians plan to direct their money to spending time with family and friends after the end of the pandemic shutdown. Asked what they intended to spend their money on, other than necessities, once the virus crisis has passed, 44% of the surveyed Australians said they were going to visit restaurants and cafes, and you can definitely include me in that statistic. 42% plan to book domestic holidays, another 22% were looking at international holidays, and 23% were going to spend on out-of-home entertainment such as cinema or theatre tickets. Now, all that is welcome news for the battered tourism and art sectors and the hospitality sector generally. Keep in mind that many Australians are being forced to save at the moment because they can't go out and spend. So for those who still have steady incomes, which despite everything is most of us, there's money being saved that I think will be spent when the restrictions are relaxed. And this survey tends to support that notion. Now, turning to some of the real estate issues that have come to light in the past day or so. And let's begin today with some news from the Melbourne property market. Now, reports suggest that parts of the Melbourne housing market are resisting the economic downturn, particularly entry-level homes. Activity is stronger for homes at the more affordable price points than for the higher priced properties where purchasers are likely to find themselves in a buyer's market. Now, many first home hopefuls with secure jobs who have spent months looking for a property and in many cases missed out at auctions during the recent market rebound are now finding it easier to find a home, and they're still out there looking. While they're competing with others who are also well advanced in their search, it's a little easier than it was 2 months ago, according to local buyers agents in the Melbourne market. Now, it's a great time for first home buyers to be looking in the market because there's less competition, there's plenty of government assistance available, and interest rates are about as low as they could possibly go. Now, there are similar reports coming out of the Sydney market, and those reports suggest that there's pent-up demand from first home buyers and young families who, like in Melbourne, have spent months searching for their new home, and that's fueling competition for at least some Sydney properties. Now, economic uncertainty and the restrictions on auctions and property inspections have taken a toll on buyer demand generally, but some buyers are pushing ahead, particularly those who were continuously outbid when the market was stronger a few months ago, with agents reporting solid competition continuing for quality homes, particularly in the entry to mid-level markets in Sydney. Now back to Melbourne, and developers are offering special treatment for essential workers, from nurses to police personnel, looking for a home in 2 big developments which are now being launched in Melbourne. The developer of a new 2,500 lot housing estate in Sunbury, up in the north of the city, which launches this week, will make 20% of the blocks available at a $20,000 discount to those care workers. Meanwhile, the head of a group launching a $1.3 billion housing estate across 274 hectares, which is believed to be the biggest ever in Melbourne's southeast, is also keen to support these essential worker groups. Belcon Group General Manager Jason Shaw says a police officer has been one of the first people to get a block of land in the Arana estate at Clyde North, down in the far southeast. Their lots will not go on sale publicly until June. The development currently has 50 people employed as it works through town planning and civil construction, including a 1.3 kilometre arterial road, 1.5 kilometres of water mains, and 1.4 kilometres of gas mains. Now, auction clearance rates are taking a hit in Sydney and Melbourne, but it does depend on how you calculate a clearance rate. Many properties are simply being withdrawn from sale by vendors who don't like the idea of online auctions. But one agency, Ryder, has claimed a 54% clearance rate in the past week, although this includes properties sold prior to the scheduled auction, which seems to be a common event at the moment. Ray White Group Managing Director Dan White says auction numbers compared to last year are down, but there are plenty of reasons to be positive. He says what is well up on last year is the number of average registered bidders per auction, increasing from 2.5 to 3.9 for each auction. There's been a tremendous consistency in genuine buyer interest right across the Australian metropolitan markets, both before and during the pandemic. And he says the key message from our auctioneers is that those who are registering are genuine and actively bidding. The tire kickers are now absent from the market, and that's a good thing. In a recent broadcast, I reported an upturn in time and money being spent on adding value to people's homes through renovations. Now, another trend that is gathering pace is property owners adding value by building granny flats. And Brisbane is one place in which more owners are using that method as a way to extend and add value to the family home. Lifestyle and demographic changes are leading to a rise in the number of granny flats popping up in Brisbane backyards. And Lachlan Walker, the Director of Place Projects, says their rising popularity are being caused by a shift in the way families are having to live, with children staying at home longer and people wanting to make caring for older family members easier. Now, Grace Song, the Director of Arc Space Architects, says the granny flats provide families with flexible living arrangements to best meet their needs, and they can add considerable value to a property. In one example, a 42 square metre granny flat she designed for a property in the Brisbane suburb of Chelmer delivered an almost 25% increase in the property's overall value. Now, another of the outcomes I expect when we exit the shutdown period is a resources boom across Australia. And one reason is that our biggest trading partner, China, is still expected to deliver economic growth this year and then have a significant boom next year, according to the International Monetary Fund report recently. A Queensland Property Investment Group has banked on the mining sector thriving. Sentinel Property Group recently increased its substantial footprint in Mackay for the purchase of 2 properties in the industrial suburb of Paget for $13 million, bringing its commitment to the region to almost $120 million. And Sentinel's Managing Director Warren Ebert says, despite the economic impact of COVID-19, mining in the resource-rich Mackay region will continue to flourish, with the Queensland Government reliant on the sector to kickstart the economy. And in that general region, we've seen reports this week of a significant rise in rental applications in the Whitsundays area, with 25% of the new applications coming from people working in the central Queensland mining sector. Normally, the percentage of mining tenants was about 10 or 15%, so it's gone up a lot recently. And staying in Queensland, around 14,000 new jobs will be created under a $600 million battle plan to fight the economic downturn caused by COVID-19. The state government has been asked to fund the multi-pronged plan drawn up by local councils from across the state to create jobs, provide economic stimulus in their cities and towns, and to help them provide some relief to ratepayers. It includes a $200 million new capital works plan, also funding for a 3,000 strong green army to protect and improve the environment for the tourism and agricultural industries, and training for 800 displaced workers through local government apprenticeships and traineeships. The Local Government Association of Queensland says half the capital works programs will be to build and improve roads, bridges, parks and water infrastructure, and importantly, bushfire mitigation to get the state ready for the next bushfire season would form an integral part of the Green Army's work. So the plan, at face value at least, provides environmental as well as economic benefits. Now, other industry bodies are also putting forward their recovery plans, including the Business Council of Australia, which has designed a 3-tier strategy to spur growth across the country. Under their new plan, employees, customers and suppliers will be protected at work through enhanced occupational health and safety standards, while governments and industry will cooperate to rebuild economic confidence, including through removing regulatory burdens. A third tier of the plan, which was released today, calls for the transition of economic assistance from life support to acceleration through regulatory and industrial relations changes and major employment-based projects. Now, the Northern Territory government has been busy and it's going to increase its spending on the home renovation stimulus package to $100 million, with nearly 1 in 3 Territorian homeowners submitting an application for that. Now, initially, the Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, doubled the funding for the home improvement scheme from $30 million to $60 million. That was Thursday last week because of unprecedented demand. And at that time, last week, there were about 10,000 applications. But now, all of a sudden, it's almost doubled to close to 20,000 applications. So they've had to increase the funding again. Meanwhile, the Darwin Council has started recruiting for the city's Green Army, a new program aimed at putting newly unemployed Darwinites into work beautifying the city. Anyone from the Darwin community who's recently lost their job as a result of the COVID-19 restrictions is eligible to apply, with 100 full-time positions up for grabs. Turning back to Melbourne, work will start soon on a new $1.5 billion hospital in the Footscray area. Demolitions on the site apparently are underway, and construction is scheduled to commence later this year, and the hospital is expected to open in 2025. On the Gold Coast, construction of the $700 million light rail extension to Burleigh is one step closer as work is fast-tracked in response to COVID-19. Fences have been erected at Broadbeach as machinery moves in to begin building a construction compound before digging begins on the tram line. Among the first pieces of work set to start within weeks is the demolition of a Celtic service station on the Gold Coast Highway to make way for a new terminus of the line. Now, State Transport and Main Roads Minister Mark Bailey says this is one of several big ticket projects getting underway in Queensland. He says we're also continuing on with 2 major Gold Coast M1 upgrades between Mudgeeraba and Tugun, which are also providing an important pipeline of local jobs. In Adelaide, South Australian Water will transform land at the former Port Stanvac oil refinery into a solar farm with a multi-million-dollar project. More than 35,000 solar panels will be installed on a 14-hectare section of the Lonsdale land to provide renewable energy to the neighbouring desalination plant. Construction is expected to start very soon. Now, the latest edition of the Crane Index has been published by Ryder, Bucknell to count the number of construction cranes on the horizon across Australia as at the end of March, just a couple of weeks ago. Total cranes across Australia now number 722, which is down 5% on the number 6 months ago. But there are a record number of non-residential cranes across Australia. The non-residential index has reached 207, the highest value since commencement of this particular survey. And a number of cities have seen an increase in the total number of cranes compared to 6 months ago, and they include Brisbane, Canberra, the Gold Coast, Newcastle and Perth. But in Sydney and Melbourne, they've seen a decrease in the number of cranes. Across the nation, of the 722 cranes on the horizon, 484 are on residential developments, and the others include commercial, health, education, hotel, civic, retail and mixed-use developments. Now today, the final word goes to an article which set out 5 clear reasons why first-home buyers should be active right now. The first reason is that investors have taken a back seat. There's less competition, which is good news for first-home buyers. It means the market isn't sprinting forward and prices won't be pushed up by investors with deep pockets. The second reason is that interest rates couldn't possibly be lower. It's never been cheaper to pay off a home loan. Many first-home buyers' parents or grandparents took on mortgages with interest rates as high as 17% in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and I was one of them, but today's rates are at rock bottom. CoreLogic data suggests that more than a third of Australian properties have estimated mortgage repayments which are less than the local weekly rents. In other words, in those areas, it's cheaper to buy than to rent because of those low interest rates. The third reason, lenders are hungry for business. Even before the COVID-19 crisis, lenders had loosened their belts for first-time borrowers. And in July 2019, the watchdog APRA had relaxed restrictions around how lenders assessed a customer's ability to meet repayments by dropping the buffer rate from a minimum 7% to 2.5% above the loan's actual interest rate, and that was a big release of funds. As a result, it's easier to get finance than it was even a couple of years ago. Coupled with that, a loss of interest from investors, and banks are very willing to chat to first home buyers. The fourth reason is that sellers are more willing now to meet the market. A lot of sellers have withdrawn their properties from the market as soon as the social distancing measures came in. But those sellers who are ready to sell or have to sell are more prepared now, more than ever, to listen to offers. And the fifth and final reason is that government handouts are still on the table. The lockdown laws may have changed the way real estate is being sold for the foreseeable future, but government assistance for first home buyers has stayed the same. For example, in Victoria, the first homeowner grant of $20,000 is available to first timers who build a newly built home in regional Victoria, and $10,000 who buy a new home in the metropolitan area. Stamp duty exemptions are available for purchases up to $600,000 and concessions for homes valued above that. And on the 1st of January, the federal government launched its first home loan deposit scheme to help buyers get on the property ladder with a deposit as low as 5%. And in the wake of the coronavirus, the government has extended the 90-day time frame for finding a home to 180 days. And that's it for today. Don't forget, tomorrow night's live Q&A. Tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, I'll be doing one of my live Q&As, providing you with an opportunity to get answers to your most burning questions about Australian real estate. And everyone who registers for that event will be able to get the new autumn 2020 edition of the Price Predictor Index at half the usual price. So hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow evening at the Q&A. Bye for now.